Welcome to today's webinar, Enterprise Cloud Visibility for Pervasive Cybersecurity. My name is Sharon Fitzpatrick, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Joining me on the panel today are Bill Erdman, Director of Product Marketing, and Praful Badazna, Senior Director of Product Management here at Big Switch. As we go through the presentation, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A box on your webinar dashboard. If you're watching this video in a rebroadcast or a recording, or if you have a question that you'd like to ask our panelists today or suggest an upcoming webinar topic, please email us at info@bigswitch.com. We've also provided you with handouts for today's session. You can download them from the Handouts tab on your dashboard. Did you know that over 65% of enterprises will have applications running in both their private data centers and within public clouds within the next 3 years? As the security team, you need to embrace these enterprise cloud deployments by identifying security solutions that work commonly, irrespective of who the infrastructure provider is. The first place to start is with a visibility and monitoring network that is not limited by where the applications are located. This webinar will walk you through the benefits of the Big Mon Fabric Network Packet Broker technologies and how this product line can be universally leveraged in an enterprise cloud world. We have a full agenda, so let's get started. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Bill Erdman.
Great, thank you, Sharon. So regarding what we're going to be presenting today, we're going to be going through a couple things. First of all, I'm going to be outlining some of the challenges that we see in which we believe can be basically better understood and mitigated with an effective monitoring strategy using your networking technologies and products we offer from Big Switch. I'm going to talk a little bit about the expanding role that the security operations teams have now with regards to needing to monitor and have visibility into their enterprise and cloud infrastructures. And then I'm going to turn it over to Praful, who actually is going to go through the product capabilities that we offer here and how we think we can make a difference in helping you handle your security issues. Now, so to start the discussion off, I first want to bring up, some things that have been recently published, primarily from eWeek, on some of the top security challenges and where we think network monitoring can really help here. So first of all, they're pointing out that your security attacks can almost come from anywhere now. It's not just from one part of the world where you have some very smart security hackers, i.e., Russia being known for it. They're saying that it's going to spread throughout the globe. It could come in from Africa and other places as well. And one of the nice things about network visibility monitoring is that it can basically flag where the attacks are coming in from a global perspective. And if you think there are certain countries or places in the world that are more likely to be hacking your infrastructure, if you will, you can actually monitor and set filters for it. And again, Praful will be going through that. Another thing that we see is that customers are throwing a lot of money at security, and rightfully so, but it's not necessarily well-organized money. There's a lot of point solutions out there, depending on whether you're a DevOps team and you've got to be careful of your source code and somebody hacking into your development environment, or you've got a production application running and it's sitting up in the cloud. There are a lot of tools that are being purchased there, but they're not being done in a holistic way. And so we will be presenting, a view on how you can build an infrastructure in which multiple teams can leverage, and you can get a better return out of your dollar, if you will, by leveraging it in a more consistent, coherent, and strategic way. And then, of course, there is the issue about the cloud, and we'll be going through that. And we're actually going to give you visibility into some up-and-coming products that we're working on that will become to market over the next few months and towards the end of this year that are going to help you address your security from a networking perspective, both cloud and enterprise. Okay, so, security. It has been a known issue for years, and it's only going to become more sophisticated. And if you ask the CIOs, they've got a lot of things on their plate. The biggest thing is how they can keep their business competitive from a digital economy perspective. But the number one issue from an infrastructure end is security. Year after year, they're still very concerned about security. And so why hasn't it been handled before? We've got all these wonderful IT technologies, is because the infrastructures keep moving forward into more of a modern day environment, that being, virtualization, cloud, and container-based, and we'll be going through that. And you've got a lot of more smart hackers out there that know how to hit your vulnerabilities. So it's an organic thing that you're going to have to deal with, and what we're presenting is hopefully a view on how to get a better return on your dollar by looking at it more holistically, and to build a monitoring infrastructure, if you will, that you can leverage multi-years out, and you don't have to keep redesigning and re-architecting every year. Okay, so what we know from our end of the world, from a networking perspective, is that customers have what we call a visibility gap. You can't manage what you can't see. You can't secure what you can't monitor and measure. And so we believe fundamentally that you need to have a deep visibility from what's taking place, and one of the best places to do this, of course, is the network. The network is the spine between your storage and your data and your apps and your locations, whether the traffic's coming in or out, or whether it's going east or west or whatnot. It sees everything. Now, it doesn't necessarily see the payload. It could, if you wanted to use something like a sniffer tool, which is something that we can basically help scale out. But it is the right place in many ways to do the monitoring visibility. And we're going to be speaking about, again, how you can build a visibility network that can scale and give you a return for multiple years out. Now, customers are challenged just in their own enterprises over the last 5 years, if you will, or 10 years. The world has moved from physical server hosting and arguably, even storage being very physical, to the world becoming very virtual. So now you have virtual machines running on physical servers, and the applications can live and move anywhere. You've got storage now that's highly distributed, similarly to how your virtual machines are. It can live and move anywhere if you're using any kind of hyperscale technologies and hyperconvergence technologies. And you've got the next iteration of virtualization, where you now have containers that actually can have multiple tiers of the apps all within a self-contained virtual machine. Customers are basically challenged there because it's raising the complexity bar and making it more difficult for them to see actually what's going on. Before they were concerned about traffic running north-south in and out of their data center to those physical servers. Now you've got a lot more traffic running east-west with how customers are building their scale-out applications, and they don't know how secure they are between those, i.e., the big conversation these days with microsegmentation. You've got containers now that have routing up in the virtual layers, and to extend and even make this even more complicated, you now have a portion of your development and production communities, if you will, putting applications up in the public cloud. Now, with regards to public clouds, they've come a long ways. They have plenty of hooks now in how you can button it down and make it very secure. But the issue is, have the people who've done the application hosting up in those public clouds followed your best practices? Are they complying to the security guidelines? Do you have the visibility that you have over in your enterprises? And why wouldn't you manage them the same way? So, you need to have a broader view and a consistent, coherent way to go about managing these various different hosting environments. Okay, so from an operations perspective, in our view, you want to use your same best practices and your same tools. You want to leverage them. You don't want to have a tool that only works in the data center. You want to have a tool that also can work up in your cloud. Now, a lot of the tool vendors, whether it's IDS or IPS or some other kind of tool that way, has virtualized it. But the issue is, how do you connect it and run it up in the cloud? And that really comes down into getting a consistent monitoring infrastructure that can give you the control and management capabilities in either location and hosting site. Okay, so to that end, we believe you need analytics everywhere. And what analytics really means is that the tools, as I said, that you'd be using in enterprise, you can scale up into the service provider public clouds. And it's a different infrastructure. Obviously, you don't have the same visibility in that infrastructure, but if you build a monitoring infrastructure on top of your production network, whether it's sitting in enterprise or it is a version of an Amazon, what we call VPC or tenant network, you should be able to monitor and use your same tools. And analytics is both like flow management, packet recording, time machines, and some of the third-party tools that you would use as well. And we are certainly going to show you a strategy on how you could do all of this. Okay, now shifting gears a little bit, the industry has recognized the need for what we call these visibility networks, primarily leveraging the networking technologies. And what has become known and actually widely deployed is creating a dedicated visibility network that's non-disruptive, out of band, but can actually capture and see traffic real time. And there's plenty of good technologies for doing it. There was and there is what we call the Gen 1 solution that has made what we call purpose-built switches with specialized ASICs, custom filtering, and you can basically scale a monitoring network out that way, but it adds another layer of complexity in that you have to now manage another network, and the technologies around that basically have been deployed in terms of what we call the box-by-box mentality. Each switch has to be configured. You have to set the policies locally at the edge. You have to set all the filtering at the edge. You have to now, again, another network that you have to manage and monitor, and the OpEx behind it, adds cost. It gives you the visibility, but it's complex and it's often proprietary to manage. We want to show you a more open, scalable way to do this using open switch technologies and a centralized controller point, and Pruff will be going through that. Okay, so to that end, just to give you a scope of what we believe is an effective monitoring strategy from a networking perspective, you really need to think about all the points of how the traffic comes into your network. And we think the data center, of course, is the nucleus of it, because most things are pointed back at your data center from a storage and application perspective, and that the communication coming in is going to be coming in off your campus, it's going to be coming in off the internet, it's going to be coming in off your IoT devices, and also now it's going to be coming from your cloud environments. And what we know fundamentally is that as you try to rationalize this and get a good handle on it, you want to get as much as you can a single pane of glass. Now, single pane of glass is always is always a fleeting thing, but from how we've seen it, if you can have a centralized control point for your monitoring fabrics in your infrastructure, and you can basically hierarchically push the data up into a centralized manager, you can move towards a centralized view from a reporting and compliance in a single pane of glass. And so what we're introducing that we'll begin shipping later this year is what we call MultiCloud Director, that actually takes all of the monitoring infrastructures that you would have, whether they're in your enterprise, this site, that site, and your public cloud hosting environments and the infrastructures you'd have there for monitoring, and moves it into a single pane of glass. And that's our MultiCloud Director product. Okay, so people, often question who is Big Switch? Well, Big Switch actually has their roots in the software-defined networking world. Our founders came out of Stanford. They basically said there's got to be a better approach from a networking perspective, move away from the proprietary high-margin models to something that is more commodity-based. The view is that from a hardware perspective, switching and routing are well known, and there's plenty of good hardware out there in the market today for building networks. They don't have to be a black box coming in from Cisco or Arista, some of these other vendors, and that the real intelligence sits up in the controller layer from a manageability and a flow management perspective, and that's the piece that we've built here at Big Switch. And we actually have spent a considerable amount of time talking to the analyst community, and we actually have a lot of good customer success stories behind us. We've been shipping products for about 4 years now, and we're growing, and we're known as a visionary in the marketplace, and we see our use cases as both from a monitoring and actually from a data fabric perspective, and we're doing quite well, and we're on a really good growth trajectory. And the good news is that we're now seeing, a broad adoption of software-defined networking approaches and the white boxes that go with them.
We do have a question before we go on any further. What is the difference between hybrid cloud and then the other cloud?
That's a great question. And there's actually a lot of writing going on right now, especially in tech data, with the difference between hybrid cloud and multi-cloud. And hybrid would be where you have the ability to move a workload from one site to another site and have it, be able to leverage the infrastructure irrespective of what site it's in. And the only way that works is if you had the same hypervisor technology in the one site and the same hypervisor technology in the other site. So hybrid works when you have an enterprise that has two similar data centers. That's hybrid. And or the other view on hybrid is think about a hybrid car. You can move from gas to electricity, which is not really the case today when it comes to moving your application. You can't move from a KVM environment to an ESX VMware environment. It's just too much difficulty and too much, the abstractions are too different. Okay, and then there's multi-cloud, where the customer decides that they want to expand beyond their own data center and use somebody else's data center for running their application. And that's where we see the mainstream adoption, is that I don't want to spend the dollars for building out another data center for the additional needs I have, whether it's capacity on demand, time of year, whatever, like a Target. They want to use some of their burst capacity, and they'll go use Amazon. And so they need to have the security and monitoring capabilities in what we call multi-cloud, being able to leverage the same tools, knowing that they're different infrastructures, they're just different sites, and it's helping them handle their capacity needs.
To extend to what Bill has been saying, in the industry, we've been seeing multiple types of clouds. So for enterprises, typically, if you have data centers within the enterprise, you'll have something called as a private cloud, or also known as an enterprise cloud. Its main task is to give you public cloud-like benefits, but on-premise. Now, that said, you may still have some workloads going into other clouds. It could be AWS, it could be Google, it could be Azure. Now, if you do have workloads which are residing on-premise in your private cloud or in the public cloud, you would still need to want to have the visibility and the security similar across all of your workloads. And when you are dealing with these different technologies on-prem as well as cloud, that organization typically is called as a hybrid cloud organization, because now you have workloads in both places.
And so they fully answer that in terms of the context of what we're talking about today. Skipping ahead a little bit, what we're doing is we're abstracting those different infrastructures into providing a ubiquitous monitoring capability using the same technologies that we offer with the same single pane of glass and the same consistency. So your SecOps or your network ops who deploy the monitoring infrastructures don't have to learn about different technologies and different approaches. They can leverage the same best practices irrespective of whether it's this infrastructure or that infrastructure. Now, in the purpose of time, Sharon, I'm going to skip these next two slides because people can read those in terms of our customer validation and reference sites, and I'm going to skip over to the meat in terms of what we offer from a product perspective.
Okay, great, thank you. We do have a couple of questions, but I'm going to keep them till the Q&A tab, but please keep them coming.
All right, so we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more specifically about what products Big Switch Networks offers in the network visibility and monitoring area that can truly help address a lot of your security challenges. First of all, we have a full product offering from the company perspective. we actually include a data center switching capability that basically addresses a lot of customers' infrastructure needs. But more importantly, from a security perspective, we actually offer two different products built on the same infrastructure for monitoring. One is what we call the Big Mon Inline product, which sits out in your DMZ and provides an inline capability for being able to plug and play what I would call your various different security defense tools, whether it's intrusion detection, intrusion protection, or some of even the application monitoring and mitigation tools. And then we offer a product capability, again with the same infrastructure, for doing what we call out-of-band monitoring that would sit directly in your data center network and capture traffic coming in and out of the data center in more of an east-west way, in looking at traffic conversations, traffic patterns, traffic anomalies, and in fact able to give you even packet copy and packet capture and packet recording for doing a lot of compliance, again, security detection, security prevention, and a series of other things that I will go through. Now, what's interesting about our offerings, and very much different than what you would find with some of our competitors, is that we have built these products on an open platform with open technologies. And what we mean by that is that we have moved networking from what has been traditionally a proprietary black box approach, where you buy the hardware, the network operating system, and a lot of the network intelligence all within the box itself. We have disaggregated it and made it a true ecosystem offering. So to be specific here, everything that I'm going to be going through can be purchased and run on what we call white boxes or bright boxes. And those are basically switches that are Broadcom based that can be purchased from a number of vendors as an open switch. And those would come from vendors like HP, Intel, and there's also a company that's becoming better known, especially within the hypervisor or the hypercloud space, called Acton. And you would basically pick the box that would meet your I/O needs, whether it is something that you would want to do for out-of-band monitoring with your taps, or actually something that you would do inline monitoring for your DMZ. And again, I will go through that. You would then add our software on top of it. And our software primarily is an enhanced operating system that includes an interface that would communicate from the fabric up to what we call a centralized controller. And the centralized controller is really where our DNA sits as a company, because that is where we are doing fabric programming, fabric configuration, integration with the third-party orchestration and automation tools, and also being able to quickly configure and redirect traffic from your source to your destination. And in the destination sense, and you will see it, will be where your third-party security intrusion and protection tools sit for doing all of the security monitoring and visibility, if you will. And so the way this goes to market is that you would actually go to a systems integrator, or you could go directly to Dell. You would tell them that you would want a certain number of switches depending on how you want to scale out your monitoring fabric. You would then purchase from them our software that we make available with them, and then we would work with you on getting it integrated and basically configured within your environment itself. So that is a much different model than probably what you're used to. The benefit again here is it's open, it's an ecosystem approach, and it really moves the industry finally away from a proprietary black box market and makes it feel more like how you purchased and leveraged your x86 compute environment with different operating systems for different needs and so on. So that is actually, again, how we offer our products and how we go to market. Now, to get into a little bit more specifics of what we do, one of the more interesting products that we have that we're beginning to see traction on is what we call our Inline offering for security, visibility, and security protection. And what we mean by inline is actually where you go into your network at the DMZ area, where you have traffic coming in from the internet, typically off of a VRF or basically a backbone router, where the traffic is getting terminated and coming in, and often where you put your third-party intrusion detection and protection tools in to re-architect that network and add what we call these open switches, as you see over here on the right, and then to put what we call these open switches in, which creates what I call a plug-and-play like AC wall plug. So think about it. With an AC wall plug, you can take almost any kind of device you want, plug it in, and have it work. Well, what we're doing here is giving you a highly programmable AC wall plug socket that can scale out to 10, 25, 40, 100 gigabits per port and go beyond that depending on what your needs are, and be able to plug in these third-party security protection and prevention tools based upon your needs of the day. And when I say it's highly programmable, what we're offering here is the ability to program the traffic flows from that coming into our switch being controlled and configured by the controller, and by flow types, push the traffic over to the tool that's looking at specific types of flows. So you may have a tool that's looking at database flows, or you may have a tool that's looking at web traffic flows. Those flows would be specific to that tool, and you wouldn't push other flows to it and basically, oversubscribe it. It is a much more scalable subscription model here in terms of being able to feed the traffic specifically to the tool that has an expertise in a certain kind of intrusion detection and prevention, rather than this one spigot and trying to feed everything in through one pipe. It doesn't scale as well. So what we're offering is much greater scalability here, and the benefit in the offering is that these switches are third-party switches. They can again be purchased from Dell and a series of other vendors, and then you put our controller software on it, centralized GUI for doing all the configuration and all the flow management, and you have this, what I call this more plug-and-play sort of smart AC wall socket and how you scale these things out. Okay, so then the other product we have here, and this is actually where we see a lot of interest and traction from a data center perspective, and this is actually what I call sort of your second line of defense. The product I just went through, which is the Inline DMZ product, which is, I call it your first line of defense. Any traffic coming into your data center, if you will, that has got any kind of security hack, phishing attack, you name it, you're going to want to immediately detect and mitigate, because that's a problem coming in from the outside that could wreak a lot of havoc. There's a lot of things that actually go on inside the data center that people want to basically monitor, but not necessarily take immediate action on. It may be something suspicious that you want to look at over time. So you may want to monitor the traffic, record it, be able to analyze it, and play it back. Or for some of the new sort of regulations coming out, like let's say in Europe, where you have tighter data privacy requirements, you may start to sense some suspicious activity where somebody may be pulling an unauthorized actor, if you will, within your company is pulling some privacy data. You may want to watch it to ensure that it's legitimate or not. Again, record it, analyze it, and play it back. So I call this sort of second line of defense security monitoring, and to do that, you want to have a network capability here that again can scale out, that is basically used non-intrusive, so it's not interrupting or sitting in your data plane, and allows you to do all sorts of security monitoring without interrupting your data traffic. And so what we basically are saying to customers, as well as some of our competitors, go build what we call an out-of-band monitoring fabric capability. And what we mean by out-of-band is build another network that sits on top of your production network, uses what we call packet copy and packet redirect technologies, where you're using a tap port or a span port or an ER span port, basically a way to push the traffic out of your data network and into an out-of-band network, and then through that out-of-band network, be able to push the traffic up to where your tools sit for doing all of the things I just mentioned, like analysis, security, detection, prevention, being able to record the traffic, being able to play the traffic back. You know, there are special tools for looking at voice and voice recording, looking at tools for video traffic and video activities, and all sorts of series of things. And what we believe, again, like the intelligent wall socket analogy, you want a central way to be able to plug these tools in that all of your departments can use and leverage, and not have to build 3 different networks for 3 different types of tools. Have one central out-of-band network capability in which all your tools can be basically used and leveraged, and that's what this offers. And you know, going back to my previous slide, the beauty here is that this out-of-band network can be built with these third-party open ecosystem switches that you can get from Dell and HP and others in a much more cost-effective way, and then you just then add our controller capability on top of it, plug your tap or span ports into it, and be able to do the flow management of the monitored traffic and have it go from your source, it may be a VM coming off of a span port, and push it up to your destination. And that could be a tool from, let's say, ExtraHop that could be doing deep packet analysis and give you information on the protocol behavior of the application that's running on that virtual machine. Our GUI, which is centralized, gives you the ability to easily program that use case, if you will, by redirecting the traffic from that endpoint, that being the VM, which is sitting in our GUI because we pulled that off of vCenter, and push it up to the ExtraHop tool, which is a known tool sitting off of the fabric at the centralized sort of collection point, and being able to, you know, give you the results of what they see from a protocol behavior. And so the out-of-band network approach here gives you that capability, easily programmed, easily scaled, non-disruptive, non-impacting to your production network. And again, it is a beautiful way to be able to do the security monitoring without impacting or being intrusive into your production network itself. Now, the one thing that we have just added, and we're getting a lot of traction on this, is the Big Mon recorder node. And what that is it's an x86 specialized computer that we actually work very closely with Intel on. It has a lot of fast processing in it and a lot of fast storage, flash-based storage, if you will, for basically capturing and recording the traffic. And think of it like a time machine, being able to time slice the traffic coming into it, being able to filtering it by the endpoint, by the VLAN group, by the tenant group, however you'd want to do the filtering, and then based on time of day, being able to play back that traffic to understand and look at certain traffic anomalies and certain traffic behaviors. And in fact, you could even do further packet deduplication and analysis on it to understand exactly what the behavior of the endpoint is, and if there's any security issues related to it. So what we're seeing is a growing trend in the industry to record a lot of this monitor traffic, if you will, and have an effective way to play it back and to analyze it. Okay, so as I mentioned, and this just goes through some of the benefits of this out-of-band network, is the ability to do this using industry standard switches. And as I mentioned, you can get these switches, and most of them are Broadcom based, Broadcom being the chip developer for how switching is done, and switching is a pretty well-known technology now. There are switches out there very similar to, you know, how you buy your server with the Broadcom chipset in them that run full wire speed, multi-terabit switches. You can get them from, as I mentioned, a series of these vendors in almost any interface you want, whether it's 1 gig all the way up to 100 gig, and you can scale and pay as you grow, and, you know, grow your out-of-band security fabric without having to pay the proprietary prices of a black box. Okay, so that's just our model there. And then from the other side of the network, that being the place where the traffic is pushed and collected and analyzed. We basically are using an approach that we believe is more scalable and more cost effective, in where the traffic needs to be analyzed, handled, filtered, doing things like packet duplication, packet slicing, packet masking, and a series of other things. Those functions, in our view, are best done in an x86 computer, in an Intel-based processor computer, versus trying to do those within the switches themselves. Now, there are boxes out there that can basically do this kind of packet handling, but you pay the price for it, because they have to have custom FPGAs in them with custom silicon, custom programming, and you're back down that black box proprietary path from a networking perspective. Our view is push the traffic across the fabric in a basically non-disruptive way, at scale, full wire rate, whatever interface you need. Push the traffic into an x86 computer. That's what they were built for all the packet processing and packet slicing from an analytics perspective. And that is our model and what we call the next generation packet broker offering. Okay, so one of the things that we have done now that we understand how to create these very scalable out-of-band network monitoring capabilities is where the traffic is coming in centrally, and it's coming into, you know, one of the what we call the centralized fabric area. You can put these x86 nodes in, if you will. We are now adding in our offering an analytics capability, primarily flow-based. So we can look at the traffic, whether it's coming in through a NetFlow record or IPFix, or actually if the traffic's coming in raw and you want to put it in an IPFix format, if you will, we can do all of that through the x86 computer with an application node that we call the analytics node, and then represent it to you graphically. So we can show you who's talking to who. We can show you traffic anomalies. Let's say you had a big spike in traffic an hour ago from an unknown actor. That's probably a security threat. We can show those type of things. And that's what you get when you start to look at the traffic coming in centrally, being able to be processed and being able to be shown in a graphic way with what I call some intelligence behind it, based upon anomalies and changes in the traffic patterns. Because a lot of that is sort of, you know, you getting the essence of a security attack coming in, because as we all know, security attacks are not, they try to be as invisible as possible. So you need to have analytics capability running in behind it to try to outsmart the person that's trying to outsmart you, if you will. And that's one of the things you can get from the analytics node here. Okay, and then finally, and I already covered this, we offer now, using again a specialized x86 server, the ability to take traffic, record it, put it onto disk. It could be flash-based, or it could be disk-based, if you will, and then for you to be able to use it to play back or export it in an industry standard format and read it into other tools. So what we're finding is, you know, customers absolutely want to start recording and basically having a way to play back the data. So to summarize what I've gone through, I pretty much have walked you through, you know, how we see network monitoring from an infrastructure perspective. And we have a different approach here than what has been done in the past with proprietary switches, custom silicon, and a series of other things I've mentioned. We're using open switching, using primarily layer 2, layer 3 technologies to push the traffic up through the out-of-band network monitoring packet broker network, if you will, putting it centrally, running it through x86 computers for doing all of the intelligence and processing, and then obviously giving you the results, whether it's pushing it to a third-party tool or doing our own analytics and packet recording. We are the company over here on the blue, and we think we have a much better approach that can help meet your needs a lot more economically, and as importantly, with a single pane of glass and a centralized control point to help you better manage it operationally, less staff, and all the things that go with it. Okay, and then to finally wrap up here, we do have a lot of, there's a lot of people who haven't heard of Big Switch, as I went through earlier in this presentation. We have a lot of good customer traction. We recently did a webinar with one of our customers who effectively used our out-of-band network monitoring capability across their campus environment pervasively to help sniff out and prevent against phishing attacks. Phishing attacks are becoming a huge issue with the University of Oklahoma. They need it to both protect their student population and their teaching population, if you will. And they saw the benefit of being able to pull traffic in from all places of their network, whether it was their campus and out in the dormitories, or whether it was in their data center within the application group. They saw that the ability of pushing tap ports, if you will, into the packet broker network that we offer, and then to add their own tools. They're doing a lot of work with Bro, if you will, for the detection and mitigation, if you will. They saw that they could easily program and integrate these tools together and build something more holistically that the entire university could use and leverage. So we encourage you, if you're interested, to go back out on our website. Sharon can give you some directions here on how to get to it, but to go through the webinar that we did that has a very specific use case here and how they addressed phishing attacks.
So there's one question, which is an awesome question, which is, I get the fact that you can build this monitoring infrastructure capability in your enterprise network using taps and span and those type of things. But how would you do this over in an Amazon infrastructure where you don't have access to the network, the data plane, in which you could tap or span it, because they obviously don't offer any access there, and or their APIs obviously aren't full packet captures, if you will. They're CloudWatch APIs, which give you some flow information. And actually, maybe I'll let you answer it, Prabal, because we do have an interesting product coming out that will address this.
Yeah. So in the earlier slides, Bill actually showed you a slide where we talked about MultiCloud Director, which had hooks into our Big Monitoring Fabric Enterprise Cloud, which is basically the product that people run on-prem, as well as a Big Monitoring Fabric Public Cloud. Now, essentially, they are the same. So you will get the same look and feel, the same function across both your products, and the same analytics across both of them.
We're not going to talk about the details of the product we're going to offer in public cloud because we're not shipping it yet. But just to put it out there, we are going to create a tunneling capability in which you could do full packet capture into the Big Mon fabric that's virtual, and then use your virtual tools to do all of the analytics and or our analytics tools as well. It does require some virtual networking technologies that we understand fully that we will be offering to accommodate that.
Great, thank you both. We're running really short on time, so if you have any questions and we weren't able to answer them today, just go to our website, bigswitch.com, and webinars. There's a blue box. You can put the question there. We'll be glad to answer it, or just send us an email at info@bigswitch.com. So we make it really easy for you to get started with Big Switch. There are several resources you can download or watch that will give you a tour of our products. In your handouts, you'll find live links where you can click to access any of these resources listed here, as well as resources from our panel today. With BSN Labs, you can experience Big Switch bare metal SDN solutions firsthand from the comfort of your PC. We believe that there is no better way to learn about a product or technology than to take it for a test drive. This is free and totally open to you. It's real-time access to our SDN fabric products. Just go to labs.bigswitch.com, or you can also download the handout, which will give you additional information. We have a full library of webinars that you can watch on demand. You should check them out. You just go to bigswitch.com/webinars. And there's a recent webinar we did where Praful and Bill mentioned Aaron Bilello, the Managing Director of Operations and Security at the University of Oklahoma. He shares how OU improved network security and achieved greater visibility at nearly a 50% CapEx savings. That concludes our webinar for today. We thank you for joining us and see you next time.